About 75,000 years ago, the first humans found themselves in the area of modern Australia. The harsh conditions of this region pushed the progress forward. The natives invented medicines, weapons, and when they were on the verge of another discovery, they accidentally discovered ants. Ants who've been doing the same things all this time. There are no weird or useless jobs in the animal kingdom. The largest marauder ants serve as a bus for the smaller ones, delivering them to the battlefield to save the energy of the warriors. Meanwhile, honeypot ants work as pantries. These ants were first described back in the late 19th century, but scientists still didn't have enough time to study them thoroughly. Well, you know how it usually happens, as soon as you find something really exciting. It turns out there's not enough information about it. The researchers did find out something. Honeypot ants belong to several genera at once, and their function is to store food for the entire colony. Apparently, future supply keepers are trained since childhood to be accustomed to a large amount of food. It's not like attending courses and getting a certificate, it's much more complicated. However, if the colony loses all its living pantries, it has to somehow adapt. So ordinary worker ants can become honeypot ants too. This will take a couple of weeks, and this transformation really doesn't happen at the snap of your fingers. After all, the honeypot ants are just enormous. How could ants come up with something this big? Well, it's quite logical actually. Apparently, one day they just had to deal with a drought, and so they invented a specialization that would help them survive this drought. Along with all the other ants, there were now totally new ones. People had a similar history until we started growing food. We did not need farmers. We had no doctors until we realized how to heal. Well, you get the idea. So what's inside these bloated ants? Despite the name, it's not really honey. The liquid consists of simple sugars, such as plant nectar and aphid secretions. They're collected by worker ants, brought and fed to the pantries until they swell the size of grapes. Some honey barrels are more than 0.4 inches long and can weigh almost a gram. That's a lot when the weight of ordinary ants is measured in milligrams for most of their life. Honeypot ants can't even move, so they remain underground. What happens when a colony needs food? I mean, how do you open these barrels?
Tony, look in the dock.
You mean look in the dock?
I mean open them up.
Calm down, you won't see any ant horror scenes. If every honeypot ant had to be opened in the literal sense of the word, insects would long ago have stopped using this storage method. That's too wasteful. During hard periods when the colony does not have enough food, the worker ant approaches one of the honeypot ants and begins to stroke it on the antenna, after which it regurgitates some of the nutrient fluids stored inside. Okay, what about the properties of the liquid? Perhaps it differs in taste and consistency, depending on the colony. For example, some ants prefer sweet stuff, others something salty. Well, apparently if there are any differences in taste, they are very subtle. Basically, all the ants that use the barrels eat roughly the same stuff, unless the colony ends up near the Coca-Cola factory and the insects will feed on sweet waste. Doesn't sound realistic, but this has happened before. Though, not with ants. In northeastern France, bees suddenly began to produce honey of totally atypical colors. The beekeeper's investigation led to an unexpected conclusion. Instead of collecting nectar from flowers, local bees were feeding on the remnants of M&M candy shells from open containers. I'd wonder if the taste of that honey changed. And while we're on the subject of taste, what about honeypot ants? People would not be people if they did not try to put these strange insects in their mouths. Those who had a chance to try a couple of living pantries described their taste as sweetish, while some argue that the ants taste pleasantly bitter at the same time. Some, on the contrary, claim they are sweet and sour.
I would swear you got a bogey flavoured one once.
However, honeypot ants are still considered a delicacy. You supposedly need to try at least once in your life. Also, it's nutritious. And come to think about it, exotic food can rarely be so enjoyable.
It's liquid, warm, and marvelously sweet.
But when the rest of the world just started realizing that honeypot ants are delicious, the Australian Aborigines turned hunting for them into something of a tradition. Most likely they tried honeypot ants a long time ago. When they first found themselves in the arid regions of Australia, you realized that any food will do in such conditions, and the locals used ants as a source of sugar and other nutritious substances. Well, why not? True. People do not bother stroking antennae and eat insects whole. Of course, the ants are probably not happy about that. They hide their supplies as deep as possible, so that people couldn't come and wander them like hungry dorms. It's not so easy to get to honeypot ants. To prevent the contents of the barrels from deteriorating when exposed to the heat, they're placed quite deep. Sometimes 5.2 feet below the ground, maybe sometimes deeper. But people did not come across such ant hills. Most likely ants dig so deep to create natural refrigerators. After all, the lower the barrels, the longer the food will last, and it's even less likely someone would steal it. If you think about it, the job of honeypot ants can hardly be called fancy. That is, they actually do nothing. They just sit somewhere in the dark, eat, and wait. They don't even have Wi-Fi. But many ants can change their specialization and climb up the career ladder. At first, they work as nurses or nannies and attend to the queen and larvae. The next step is the garbage cleaners, and eventually the ants become gatherers, and that's when the big bucks start rolling in. So if you see these small guys dragging crumbs, leaves, and some food somewhere, you should know that they are essentially top managers in the world of ants, but some professions are passed down even among insects. If, for example, the father was a simple cleaner ant, then its son will also become a cleaner ant. It's not easy to quit your job when it ensures the well-being of an entire colony. But there are animals whose jobs were created by nature itself, and these are beavers. Strange as it may seem, beavers are the creatures who fight droughts, wildfires, and climate change. They also create a healthy river environment for other living beings, and overall, they are essentially superheroes of the wildlife, protecting water, preserving biodiversity. But if beavers are so great, why do farmers hate them? Is this some kind of ancient feud? Well, almost do you know that beaver dams block rivers? What happens if you prevent the river from flowing where it's supposed to? Exactly, floods. Water can destroy vast areas farmers need for crops or livestock. Experts estimate that the U.S. forest industry suffered more than $22 million in damage in 1 year due to flooding caused by beaver. Don't forget the threat to public safety as water erodes the soil, making roads, bridges, overpasses, and dams unstable. Whoop, it wasn't me. Humans have even learned to use beavers to transform deserts. The most advanced technologies designed to stop the sands would cost a couple of $1 trillion a year. While beavers simply build dams on rare rivers and change the landscape this way. Just one beaver dam can improve water quality and also act as a means of protecting the environment from fire. Since we started talking about fires, while some animals save and destroy the planet at the same time as part of their job, others have mastered a profession for the sake of financial gain. Not their own, of course. Goats can stop wildfires. Let me give you a second so you could imagine them in fire helmets or with fire extinguishers. They look great. In real life, it works a bit differently. Goats and sheep are herded into fire-prone areas. Their hungry herbivores move through the land, munching on bushes, trees, and grass, and creating fire breaks. Since goats are only about 3.2 feet tall, they will graze on low-lying plants, creating a gap between the ground and higher trees. This gap can prevent the spread of fire or at least slow it down. Sounds weird, but that works. And the goats are just perfect for this job. They eat everything, can traverse rough terrain without getting stuck in some bushes and holes, and they really stop wildfires. Not in real time, of course, but here are some figures for you. When a wildfire in Utah with 15-foot-high flames reach an area cleared by goats, the flames drop to only 3 feet tall, and that's in the areas not heavily grazed by goats, where the animals ate everything. They could find the fire stopped completely. It's a pity these guys can't be kept at home as fire extinguishers. See you later.